Good morning. So I had another interesting dream 2 nights ago. I've been sitting with it because I've been hesitating on whether to share it. And in fact, I still don't want to share it today, but I'm going to put it out there anyway for what it's worth. So, when it comes to dreams, first of all, a lot of people will ask me if dreams are just a fictional part of the mind or if there's some reality or truth to it. My belief that it is reality, and to a certain extent, in that when we look at different theories on time travel and different theories on the human soul and human incarnation, there's some belief to suggest that we incarnate in multiple bodies, and that there are parallel worlds, parallel lives, parallel timelines that are happening at the same time. And so that means there's multiple versions of ourselves. So one could suggest that when we're dreaming that we might be accessing an alternate timeline. Now, it doesn't mean that that timeline is going to exist in our lifetime here as we know it, but it could be playing out somewhere else in one of these parallel versions. And when we start to put the intention out to reconnect with all those other 11 versions of ourselves, we start to tap into new information, and we may start to see some of those lives. Now, that can get confusing for us as well, because some of those emotions may bleed into this timeline. So we just have to be mindful of that. But I had this dream that I was living in an apartment building in a city. I'm not sure where, it wasn't clear to me. And every day we'd go up this big elevator to get to our apartment and come home. And it was like time was fast forwarding. So we were going up and down, and working in between all of that. And then one day we go up the elevator, and when the door opens to our floor, the floor had been not destroyed, but really run down. All of a sudden, like, the wallpaper was falling off, the lights weren't working, there was broken windows. And I paused in this feeling of shock of, like, how did it get to this point? How did I not notice that it wasn't moving in this direction? It was like everything was fine, everything was fine, everything was fine. And then all of a sudden one day it was not. And when it wasn't, I could feel it so viscerally in my body. I just knew something was wrong. So anyway, we go into our apartment and start preparing our dinner. And then as we're doing that, we hear this commotion in the hallway. And as we go out to investigate, there's soldiers rounding everybody up. So everyone in the apartment building was rounded up, and we were taken into the basement, and all the women and all the men were separated. I don't know what happened to the children. I didn't see them. They weren't. I wasn't even shown that. But all the women and children were separated. The men were taken out, and the women were taken down into like a loading dock area. And then I've blacked out there, probably for good reason, so I don't know what happened next. And then fast forward in time, those of us who were taken into this loading dock, we were brought into like the main area of the apartment building, down on the ground level. And these preteens were brought out, a group of kids that were like 11, 12, 13, 14 age range. And the soldiers pulled out this sheet, and on the sheet had every child's name. And it was numbered in order from like 1 to however many kids there were. And they started telling us all about these children, when they were born, what their DNA was, who they were going to become as adults, what their character flaws were, what their character strengths were. Like, they knew everything about these children, everything. There was nothing you could hide. And I thought, well, this is weird. Why are they telling us? Like, we're basically captive. And then they tell us, pick one, because we were to marry them, children. And at that point I woke up. I couldn't take any more of that scenario. And it's been sitting with me, and I've shared it with a couple people, and the question is always like, why would that come up in a dream? Why would I see that? What's the message there? Because I don't want to spread fear. That's never the intention. And sometimes what I'm seeing is not necessarily a message. It's just that it's playing out in another timeline. And in the last little while, there's been a lot of timeline overlap. And I've talked to quite a number of people, especially teenagers, who are experiencing this, where they're in a location, and while they're in that location, they see things happening in their mind, but it's from another time frame. And as we move closer and closer to this 0 point at the end of this year, I'm not sure on the exact date, but I'm guessing it's probably closer to December 21st, that all these timelines are starting to merge together. And I think that humanity, in some ways, is making a choice about which timeline we're going to proceed on. So that's definitely one we don't want to go down. But in the dream state, there's always, and even in a lot of the older stories, parables, even the Bible, I think in a lot of ways there's literal messages, but then there's also metaphors hidden within those messages. So if you really look at what we're being shown, it's very complex. There's many layers to it, and you can start to peel back all the different meanings. So yes, there might be a timeline where this is happening on. But there may also be some metaphors in this. And when you look at this concept of going about our days, going up and down the elevator, every day I go to work and I come home, and I'm not noticing the little things that are changing. I'm not noticing those little things. It's not until one day that it looks drastically different that I go, geez, how come I didn't notice that? And how many of us have experienced that in this year, right? Of there's things we never noticed before. We just didn't see them. And it wasn't that we weren't looking, but it was that we were busy. We were going about our lives. There was no reason to pull our attention to the wallpaper, for example, right? And the wallpaper being a metaphor for other things that we're seeing. But then one day something happens and it catches our attention and we notice it. And I think, this is one of the great lessons in this year, is that we need to slow down and notice these little things before they become big things. And it's still happening, I think, right now. I think we're still resisting seeing those little things because we're anxious to get back to the way things were. We want it to be, quote unquote, normal. But in many ways, I feel like if we were to go back to what we would consider normal, that we will have failed in our evolution as human beings, because there's something really valuable in us slowing down, in us asking questions and looking around and even just reflecting. Does this seem right to me? Does this feel good to me? Is this in my highest interest? Is this the path that I want to go down? And, regardless of what your answer is, if the answer is no, it doesn't mean we have to fight it. It just means that perhaps we need to make different choices, because every choice we make puts us on a different path and potentially a different timeline as well. So we don't have to be out there aggressively fighting, but we do have to be actively making choices internally about what's right for us, regardless of what anybody else is telling us. I know a lot of us are struggling right now to find this balance between what do we want, what do I want internally, and what am I hearing in the world, and all the messages that we're hearing, especially those of us in the spiritual community that are, talking to other guides or visionaries or prophets or whatever. They're also just seeing one perspective, and that perspective is based or blended or colored based on their experiences and what they need to know for their path. So while it might be right for them and it might be right for a number of other people, it might not be yours, right? It might not be your path. And the only person who's going to know what your path is you. And there is nobody out there that's going to be able to tell you what that is, right? And the most important thing in this year is to start to slow down, to have that pause, to notice your surroundings and go, something's not right with this. I need to make a change for me, or I can't get a read on this. I don't know how I feel in this situation. That's a sign that you need more space. So whether that's turning the TV off and going for a walk so you can actually hear your own thoughts, it doesn't have to be a big thing. You don't have to move into a monastery. I mean, it might feel better this year, but you don't have to do that. You can achieve this in 5 minutes, And, for those of you who can't even get the space to go for a walk alone, go have a bath. Go to the bathroom, Give yourself that space, even if it's 5 minutes. You don't need an hour. It only takes a second to connect to the heart, but when we haven't done it in a while, it's going to take us a little bit longer. If you do need some support in that, you can join me Tuesday nights. If you go to soulinstitute.ca, I'm doing a light runner meditation every Tuesday. It's free to attend. And if you can't make the time, just sign up anyway, and I'll send you the recording afterwards. And then you can lock yourself in the bathroom and listen to it at a time that works for you. But pay attention to your surroundings, pay attention to your dreams, pay attention to your feelings, and follow that guidance. When you need to speak up, speak up. When you need to be quiet, be quiet. When you need to make a change in your decisions, change it. You've got this. You're the source of the answers. Have a beautiful day and a lovely weekend.